Evening once again, colleagues. As promised earlier, that we will be bringing in presenters of various policy discussion documents. We are now bringing in our general manager, who was also the presenter on organizational renewal, to just give you an overview, a feel of what she presented to plenary. And afterwards, you know the drill. Then we move with the questions. Then we will also be bringing in Comrade Gwen. She's also about to finish. She's presenting on gender emancipation. So over to you, Comrade Febe.
Should I stand?
No,
Okay, is it fine? Sorry, I don't like sitting, presenting.
Okay.
Okay, good evening. My name is Febe Potgieter. I've been introduced by Comrade Pule. I'm the General Manager of the ANC. I'm also a member of the Drafting Committee of the National Executive Committee. The discussion document on organisational renewal is one of the papers that form the foundation of this policy conference and what it is about. And the reason for the prominence that we're giving to this paper on organisational renewal, all of the commissions tonight will look at it, they will discuss it, and we will then present a consolidated recommendation to plenary on Saturday evening, which will then go back to the branches of the ANC. Now, the ANC was formed in 1912 as a movement against the exclusion of the majority of people. When the Union of South Africa was formed, it became 110 years, is it 110 or 111 next year? And part of its mission has always been to focus on how does it serve the people. The organizational renewal document raises the question that there are serious doubts about that character of the ANC as a servant of the people. It then goes back to when we have started talking about this, and we trace it back to 1997 when President Nelson Mandela in the political report to conference raised the question about what we call the sin of incumbency, the rise of careerism, of people fighting for positions within the ANC in order to get access to state resources, patronage, etc., etc. We then trace through the last, I suppose, 20 years how this has been manifested and increasingly became more acute, taking on different dimensions, and impacting on the ability of the ANC as a movement to be able to carry out that historic mission of building a better life and a non-racial, non-sexist, prosperous South Africa. What the document and the presentation also say is that the accumulation of all of these things that have happened over the years, we've seen it in the form of endemic corruption in our society and in government. We see it in the form of the social distance between the ANC and the communities that it organizes and mobilizes and represent. That in fact it faces, that the ANC faces an existential crisis. And part of that existential crisis, the way that we described it to plenary, is not so much that the movement may cease to exist, but in fact that its character may change to such an extent that it will become anti-people if we don't arrest it, or in fact it will just become such a lame duck that it becomes ineffective in making a difference in the transformation agenda in the country. And the point that we therefore made is that we've been talking, as I said, at previous conferences, that this policy conference and the national conference that we're going to at the end of the year is a make or break conference for us. In a couple of years' time, 2024, we're going for another national and provincial elections. At the last local government elections, the ANC dipped below 50% for the first time since 1994. So we cannot take for granted that it should just be business as usual. And that is the core message to policy conference, that we can either allow the organization to sink, or we need to, as members and leadership, take responsibility for making sure that we take renewal seriously, and the original mission of the movement to be able to transform South Africa, to build a non-sexist society, to open the doors of learning to all, to build a truly non-racial society, and all of the things that we've stood for over 110 years of our existence. The major focus because of course this document in terms of its diagnosis have been discussed in our branches since we released the documents in, when was it, April or May, a couple of months ago. It's been discussed in branches, it's been discussed in provinces, regions, in the leagues, as well as in the alliance. The major focus of the presentation that we made to plenary was to look at what is then the program of action that we need to implement to be able to look at decisively moving towards renewal. One of them is the first one is with regards to how do we define the mission of the ANC today? Now, I'm sure that Comrade Tabang, when he briefed you, spoke about the 5 pillars of transformation, that we need to look at transformation with regards to the economy, with regards to the state, with regards to the battle of ideas, with regards to issues of the organization and what we call society broadly, as well as the international terrain with a focus on the African continent. But in addition to that, our society has changed. We've got a middle class that have doubled over the last 20, 25 years. We've got a growing informal sector. You've got a small business sector. You have a population, and particularly a younger population, that is more educated than previous generations, but at the same time face challenges in terms of finding work opportunities and economic opportunities when they leave. We've got, and this is the paper that Comrade Gwen Ramagopa is presenting now, you have advances that we've made in terms of gender equality, but at the same time there are pushbacks in the form of the pandemic of gender-based violence and femicide that we see, the violence more generally in our society. So we need to ask the question, in terms of the dream of a non-racial, non-sexist, united and democratic and prosperous South Africa that we championed since 1994, how do we bring that dream back on track and ensure that society buy into that dream? And in that regard, we've looked at, the NEC has appointed a renewal committee that is developing, and we will present it to National Conference, a vision for a renewed ANC, but also our program of action in terms of the country towards 2032. That's one aspect of renewal, because renewal of any organization is not just only about the people, but it's also about the ideas and the vision that you have that unite the organization as well as society. So that's the one area of renewal. The second area of renewal has got to do with how do we ensure that the members and leadership that we have in an organization represent the best in society. Our constitutional amendments that suggested, for example, that we need to introduce in our December conference much stricter requirement for ANC membership. For example, at the moment, if you pay 20 Rand a year, you can join the ANC and there's no other requirements to join the ANC. What we want to do and what they're proposing is that we need to look at all sorts of different criteria, that we need to vet all ANC members to make sure that they are not corrupt, that they do not have criminal records, and all of those kind of things. That is what the commissions will be debating from tonight onwards, and then going back to our branches leading up to National Conference, because National Conference is the only one that can make constitutional amendments to the effect. But in addition to that, we're also looking at how do you invest in the development of our membership. Like any political party, you need to invest in the people that's in your organization, that if they're councillors, or if they're a branch secretary, or if they're a member of the Youth League or Women's League, you need to build leadership. And we've established the OR Tambo School of Leadership, and we're looking at how do we need to ensure that we invest more in leadership development and capacity building at all levels of the organization. The third area is to strengthen and look at our integrity measures as well as our disciplinary measures. Now, 54th National Conference has established a whole range of different measures. For example, it looked at strengthening the Integrity Commission, and that's what has happened over the last 4 or 5 years. It's introduced the step-aside guidelines. It also called for the establishment of the Commission against State Capture as one of conference resolutions. We now have the outcomes. Policy conference will have to look at all of those things and then say, what do we need to do to be able to make sure that we address the questions that's been raised by that process, but at the same time assess whether the measures that we've introduced in the 54th conference have borne fruit to be able to deal with these issues within our ranks. So that's the third area that we're looking at a program of action and proposing to National Policy Conference. The fourth area relates to questions about how do we modernize our system, our financial sustainability as an organization, our systems, for example. One of the conference resolutions that we've introduced is to modernize an online membership system. So it went live in 2020. ANC members can now manage their own membership. Of course, the system is not perfect, and we're improving it as we go along. But it means that we have a system where we can keep track of who are our members, what are they doing, what role do they play in society, and be able to then look at how they do then development to be true agents of change. And then, of course, the issues around how do we build capacity in the different tasks that the ANC we have, whether it's in the international terrain, whether it is in government, the state capacity, whether it is with regards to our public representatives, and all of the 5 pillars that Tabang spoke about. The final area of program of action that we're looking at, and of course there's others that will emerge from the policy conference, is to do with the question about leadership selection and managing succession. Now, policy conference, or the last conference, 54th conference, said that we must have an electoral committee that are able to implement the eye of the needle document. And that electoral committee has come up with fairly comprehensive rules on the basis of which we will elect the NEC at the end of the year, and then from there towards PECs and RECs and our branches. And part of the purpose of that is to ensure that when we elect leadership, we elect the best amongst us, that elects on a non-sexist basis, that we elect on the basis of the diversity of the challenges that we face as a movement and as a country, and that indeed we emerge from that conference with a leadership that we can say that they will drive and will take forward the renewal of the ANC in the next coming period. And as I say, these are the suggestions, some of the suggestions that we made to policy conference. They're going to be discussed and debated tonight starting tonight in commissions, continuing tomorrow. Tomorrow's commissions will not just only looking at organizational renewal, gender and the balance of forces, but also looking at the economy. We'll be looking at international relations, issues of health, issues of education, to look at what progress have we made or not made in each of these areas, and then to look at what needs to be done to be able to make sure that we strengthen those areas. Of course, in any organization, when we need to introduce, let me not say want, but need to, because of this existential crisis that the ANC face. We must introduce these changes. We must renew. We don't have a choice anymore. There will be resistance, and part of the task of the program that I'm talking about will have to be to build a critical mass of our structures, members, cadres, leaders that are committed to a program of the renewal of the ANC, and to be able to isolate those elements that are not in favor of renewals. One of the things that both in the President's opening address, and I think a couple of days ago that President Beki said at the memorial service for Deputy Secretary, the late Comrade Jesse Duarte, is that across the country, you have thousands of ANC members that want to make sure that the role that they play makes a difference in their community. The role that they play as public representatives, as councillors, make a difference in the lives of their communities. We've also reported through the TG at the plenary that in December last year, 90% of ANC branches were not in good standing. At the moment, after the process that we've gone through, over 4,000 branches have gone to BBGMs, and they are in good standing. So there are possibilities, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we remain the course in the interests of making sure that change happens in the country, and that indeed we are able to go back to the core values of the ANC, as well as to go back to being the servant leadership that the movement have been since its inception in 1912. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Comrade Febe, for that comprehensive overview. Surely it empowered journalists to understand what we mean when we talk about organizational renewal. I'm going to open the floor for questions and just indicate that Comrade Gwen is already here, which means that at the end of this briefing we'll immediately move to the next one. So can we open for questions? Okay, Moloko. Where's the roving mic?
Thank you. Moloko Mloto from ENCA. When you say you want to introduce stricter criteria for new members, some people would say you possibly are saying that the problems of the ANC, corruption, whatever, are created by new people. And such cynics will say, actually it is people who have been in the ANC for very many years. But also, second question about the women. Why is it so difficult for women in the ANC to be elected into, say, positions of chairperson of a province or secretary? It's as if you always prefer them to be deputies. What's so difficult about that? I mean, you were celebrating the first woman to be elected deputy chairperson in KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you.
In terms of strengthening the integrity committee, what exactly does that mean exactly? Do their decisions or findings become binding? Is that something that would be discussed?
It's Governors from ENCA. Your discussion paper proposes scrapping voting in slates. What proposal do you have to actually make that happen? And right now, anyone that appears in front of the Integrity Commission is advised that anything they say can be reported to the police if they incriminate themselves. That's proven to be a real stumbling block for the Integrity Commission. Has there been a debate around that? Any attempt to change it? And then you also proposed that candidates for leadership positions should reveal, or at least be transparent about the sources of funds. Is there any structure that you've set up or disclosure mechanism? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Khotatso Marisa at the Sunday Times. There seems to be a growing discussion and debate around how to deal with divisions in the ANC. That the leadership race, especially towards the national conference, is what has actually divided the party and keeps dividing the party. Now, in order to deal with that, the divisions, there seems to be a growing debate around, and proposals rather, around how to structure the leadership contest. One of those proposals that seems to be coming up is getting ensuring that a president serves for 2 terms, a deputy president automatically comes in as the next president. There are growing goals around this in order to deal with the issue of divisions. Is this something that the ANC is discussing at the high level, because it's coming from provinces? And how, if it is indeed being discussed, how do you then deal with the issue of members who want to participate in the voting process? Does it not eliminate that their right to participate in their preferred leadership and the election or of their preferred leaders? Thank you.
Those are the only questions. Okay, I'm going to allow GM to respond.
Okay, those are really good discussions. It's as if you're in the commissions. Okay, the proposal around membership does not imply that it's only the problem of new members. At the moment, there are 2 sets of proposals which address different or both dimensions of the challenges that we face. So the first one is the question about that if you join the ANC, so that's new members, you need to, in the same way that public representatives should not have a criminal record, in the same for members of the ANC, and the proposal is that that should go into the constitution of the organization. It's not there at the moment, it's only in our rules for public representatives. So yes, it deals with new members. The proposal about existing members focus on a discussion initially when the proposal came from I think the Veterans League, was that you need to, everybody must reapply to become an ANC members. You then have a vetting process, and you then look at how do you make sure that members that you have in the movement do not have those kind of taints that doesn't make them suitable to be a member of the ANC. What is being discussed now in the proposals in the documents is to be able to make sure that you have to renew occasional as a member. The proposal is that after national conference that we have a process where we all renew our membership, and that we then all get vetted all the members of the ANC then be able to get vetted, so that you're sure that when the membership that you have are members that indeed ascribe to an agreed set of values, a set of principles, a set of criteria that we have. So that's a matter for debate. So we're not talking only about new members. There's also measures that's proposed for existing members of the ANC, all of us, irrespective of whether you've been a member of the ANC for 1 year or 40 years of unbroken service. That is the suggestion addressing both those issues, which Commission will be debating. The issues around strengthening the Integrity Committee, part of it is to make sure that the provisions about the role of the Integrity Commission is strengthened within the Constitution so that it's a constitutional structure. The responsibilities that it has, its role, its relationship to the NEC, whether it should or should not have provincial integrity commissions as well as the national integrity commissions. Those are all issues that's in the constitutional proposals that policy conference will be looking at, and then eventually for adoption at national conference. The question that was asked about whether when you go to the Integrity Commission, the Commission maintains the right to report it to the police if a crime is revealed, is a matter as part of the powers that I say and the terms of reference of the Integrity Commission that we will also be debating to see what is the best way forward so that we do put in place a system of tackling issues that's really against the value of the ANC. Okay, what is the next date? Okay, how do we deal with slates? There are proposals that the Elections Committee, chaired by Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, has proposed to the NEC, and the NEC have adopted them, that we need to look at in the way that we nominate leadership, that we address the gender question, but also make sure that we don't make it that easy for slates. So, for example, in terms of nominations, and it's to some extent answer the question about why it's so difficult to elect women to other positions besides Deputy Secretary, that in the nominations to ensure that there's also gender equality, so that you don't find that you nominate 20 people and only 3 of them are women, and then we're surprised why only 1 gets elected. So that you also apply that gender equity principle in the nominations process that's going to start from the end of August. The second one of dealing with slate politics is how we conduct the elections. And what we do at the moment is in provincial conferences, we have elections for the top 5 or top 6 at national level, and then we go and vote as voting delegates for all 5. And it's then easy for slates, because what people simply do is you've got 5 positions, so you just vote for your slate. And that's what happens. So what the Electoral Committee proposed is to separate elections for the top 5 and top 6 position at national conference, so that you vote for, you say your president, SG and treasurer, and you then look at the result and announce the results, and then you look at the other positions, so that you can then reflect as delegates and say that actually, but those first 3 positions, you don't have any women. So what do we do to ensure that you have more women in the other people that you nominate? So it's a combination of those issues. The question that's being discussed about dealing with divisions, and I think that for most organizations, managing succession is a difficult matter. Some organizations structure it in the way that you suggested, that you then say that if you have a deputy, then automatically the deputy becomes the president. That's one way of looking at how do you manage succession, how do you reform your internal party electoral system. One of the issues that's in the discussion paper of the constitutional amendment is to say that at the moment the system of elections in the ANC is based on an electoral college. So what we do is we elect delegates to conferences, and they make up an electoral college of 4,000 people or 4,500 that vote for an NEC, shouldn't we have a one member, one vote? A system where what's the amount? We now got about just under 600,000 members in good standing, where all of them have a right to vote for the NEC. So we're looking at all of those different proposals that are being proposed, because I think that at the end of the day, we need to look at how do we introduce systems that give power to members, but at the same time maintain the character of the ANC in the sense of gender equality, in the sense of being representative of a broad section of our society, as well as the non-racial character, and making sure that it represents the diversity of the organization. And the country. So we are looking at all of those different things. There are no, is it holy cows? I think that we're going to have in the Commission a very robust discussion about all of those issues, because at the end of the day, the extent to which the renewal will happen is one, that we must agree that we face a problem and that it is an existential problem for the ANC. And secondly, once we agree that we face this problem, to then look at what are the solutions to that, and to be able to think outside of the box, but also to be committed towards seeing it through, be consistent about implementing the renewal mechanism, and to hold our leadership, our members, our cadres accountable wherever they are, whether they're in government, local, national or provincial level, whether they're in a branch, a region or province, or in the NEC, to hold them accountable for implementing the decisions that we've taken and the tasks that we've given to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Febe. Now this brings us to the end of this segment. We'll now move to, we'll give you just, if there are those of you who want to use the bathroom, just a body break, 5 minutes, while Comrade Gwen is coming to the stage. Just to settle. So we should be able to start around 10 to 8. So I'm just giving you guys time to, so 10 to 8, we are starting with Osgwen. Thanks. Community close to 3 is already been. It's a wonderful person.
I may leave it.
Are we all here? ENCA, SABC, Daily Maverick, City Press, News 24, Sunday Times, EWN. Who am I leaving out? Huh? Okay. Power FM. I don't want them to come and say we left them out. Amos, while we start, just make sure that everyone who needs to be here are here. Evening, colleagues, once more. We don't want to still waste much time. You know the drill. Comrade Gwen presented a policy discussion document on gender and women emancipation. She will give that overview. Comrade Jeff presented the discussion document on corruption and state capture. He will give that overview. Once we are done with the overviews, we will then open the floor for questions. Again, we must thank you to have spent the entire day with us and the interest you have shown in the work of the African National Congress. Over to you, Osgwen.
Thank you very much and good evening. Do you see me seated? Okay, just that my face is okay. We put together a discussion document on gender equality and women's emancipation empowerment. There is an argument that within a democratic context, our constitution has emancipated women, but their lived experience in many instances is contrary. And one such instance is the experience of this morning in Krugersdorp, where young women who were filming were attacked and brutally assaulted. Obviously also there were young men that were also behind cameras and all that with them. So, but the women also suffered further rape and sexual assaults. So we use the word emancipation and empowerment to demonstrate that fact that whereas the law and the Constitution has liberated every South African, the gender equality struggle still should be pursued equally alongside the struggle for a more non-racial South Africa. We demonstrated that indeed a lot of progress has been made since 1994 with the RDP program beyond the Constitution, where access to health services was free, where reproductive health rights were entrenched, including in legislation, and where women's workers' rights were introduced. For instance, during our time, even when you were a young doctor, you would work even if you are expectant until the last minute when you are in labor, and you are not protected. So many women in our country not protected in having their rights, their reproductive and gender rights protected. And we also acknowledge that these rights were extended to men so that they can help women look after the children. We also have demonstrated that advancing women's economic and social empowerment through legislation and related policies, charters, and quotas was introduced, and women's access to justice and protection against domestic violence was also promoted through legislation, which was globally acclaimed as very forward-looking, and that also laws, many laws adopted since 1994, continue to be amended regularly to entrench further women's empowerment and equality in society and in the world of work, ensuring that there is greater move towards equal pay for equal work, and that issues of workplaces are free of harassment. I would like to also just share that we also looked at gender parity, representation of women in a number of leadership positions, and we noted that in Parliament and government in general, it was the first time in 2019 that we achieved the 50% representation amongst in cabinet. And however, when you look at the deputy ministers, we're still below at about 46. Premiers, we are at 27. And whereas women voters are 55%. And in our own organization, those that do door-to-door as volunteers are mainly women. We also looked at the judiciary, where between 2019-2020, in terms of judges, women constituted 38.2%, and in 2020-21, that improved to 43%. And with magistrates, 48.8% in 2019-2020, and in 2020-21, it remains the same, 48.8%. The area of least progress in terms of gender parity remains in the private sector, where the JSE listed entities, the representation of the women chairs of boards as a percentage of all chairs of boards in JSE-listed companies was at 10% in 2021. Although we appreciate that it improved from 3.5 2011 to 2015 at 8.4, but it's still very low. We've noticed also that when you include the state-owned enterprises, the share of directorship by gender across entities, it improves to about 40%, and when you exclude SOEs, it actually falls far below 40%. On social transformation, we also noticed, in addition to what I've already shared, that gender mainstreaming was adopted early in our democracy, and we really look back and are proud that the ANC was true to its commitment of a non-racial, non-sexist South Africa, and that many in the forefront of these reforms were champions and also advocates of a non-racist and non-sexist South Africa during the struggle. However, we noted that South Africa is still rated high on the list of the most unequal countries in the world, with women still exposed to high unemployment and poverty, and that gender mainstreaming mitigates potential unintentional gender bias and helps produce better gender and equality outcomes. So there's a need to do more in this area. Further, we looked at the lives of women on a day-to-day basis, the lived experiences in a household, for instance. There's a study that indicates that women spend 181 minutes on average per day on household maintenance, whereas men spend half of that, or 4 minutes. So the old adage that you invest in a woman, you invest in a family or in a community still stands true to this day. And women spend more time per day, 32 minutes, taking care of household members compared with men at 4 minutes. And that access to basic services helps women to support their households in this regard. We raised the concern and the commissions were to reflect on the issue of security of supply of energy, of water, of sanitation, amongst others, as contributing to improving the lives of women. We also noted that the household survey of 2021 by Stats SA indicated that there was increased access to water from 2002 and 2021 overall in our country, especially in provinces like that improved most, Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Excuse me. However, the same survey noted a decline in access to water in 6 provinces between 2002 and 2021. And this we have experienced it when we were doing door-to-door, and the study highlighted Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and Northwest as most affected. Social transformation further indicates that maternal mortality and many neonatal mortality showed great improvements in saving mothers and children. In 2020, And we also know that there's been improvements in life expectancy, save for the impact of COVID in the past year or two. We also noted that adolescents do have access to reproductive services as assured by the Constitution in the Bill of Rights, that reproductive health rights are also a basic right. We also presented that the needs of the LGBTIQ+ community in terms of services such as education, health, economic opportunities, workplace rights, legal rights, safety, representation and participations are also important if we have to make sure that no one is discriminated against because of sexual orientation. On economic side of it, indeed, we highlighted that the structural barriers in the economy have left a high burden of poverty on and unemployment, not only on black people in general, but also on women. We reflected on the 40% preferential procurement rate as an intervention, an instrument for transformation in the hands of the state. And whilst we noted progress in a number of areas, we also noted unclassified public expenditure reports, which is quite a huge number, at 64.7%. And we also think that this is an area that needs to be unpacked so that indeed we can be able to see where the interventions and changes need to take place, and who is compliant and who is not compliant to this transformatory intervention. Just reasserted also that investing in women is not only towards achieving inclusive growth, but also it's part of what they refer to as globally as smart economics. And there are many models that we shared with the delegates, including the European Union model that indicates that investing in women actually improves the rate at which the GDP per capita growth, the rate of GDP per capita growth of countries. And that it is not only about redress, it's also about looking at the future growth of the country. We also highlighted the plight of young women. If you look at the demographics of the youth that are not in education or employment and training institution, 44% are male and 55% are female. So whilst we need to invest in the young women, we must also not leave the young men behind, because the figures are also very high. We know if you leave the young men behind, it will still end up as the responsibility of women in the household. We've focused also on women and peace and security, and recognized the importance of the president having declared the GBVF as a scourge in society of epidemic proportion in the background of the COVID pandemic. And the NSP, National Strategic Plan against GBV, that was launched, and the progress that has been made and fast-tracked, even in instituting legislation during this period. The NSP has 6 main pillars: that of governance and institutional issues, prevention, response and care, improving economic resilience and self-reliance to decrease vulnerability, advocacy, awareness, raising communication, and research and knowledge management. We also noted that the adoption of a district development approach helped through the ministers and the deputy ministers and the MECs to reach even outlying areas and to cover the country wall to wall with the program of combating gender-based violence and femicide. Lastly, we also looked at the issues of gender and international relations and recommended that the commissions should look at how to continue advocating for gender-sensitive and more robust intervention in programs that combat gender inequalities and to set the scene for differential gender impacts on the lives of women and men in our continent and in the world. And those are the issues that we raised. So the commissions are going to look at how to deepen ideological work for analysis at the local level, at the branch level, and to capacitate those that are activists and also society in general to understand what this is all about in the ordinary lives of people and in households, in our communities and in our economy. The second area that commissions are going to look at is how to anchor gender equity in our organization. And in our consultation, which unfortunately had not gone as deeply as with the other papers because it came much later, the issue of 50-50 parity, even at the level of officials, was raised quite strongly, including also at our NWC. We also said that there's a need that the commissions look at how we deal with weaknesses of the current national gender machinery, and recommended that the gender machinery must be led by the president. We have realized that the ministry, as it is only viewed as at the same level with all other ministries, and it is not making the impact that we had expected it would. And the recommendation is that the issues of gender should be elevated to be dealt with, to be led by the presidency, similar to the HIV. Excuse me. Similar to the HIV/AIDS program, with the national department or ministry in the presidency doing the coordination, the monitoring, and the support to the leadership of the presidency. We also said that the women's ministry has been grossly under-resourced since it was established and is not able to make the desired impact. Another issue is for commissions to look at how inclusive and gender equitable, how inclusive gender and gender equitable socio-economic transformation can be achieved, building on the improvements, yes, but also incubating SMMEs and cooperatives as part of an exit strategy for the many women who are supported by the social security net currently. And we also affirmed that there's a need to enforce the 40% minimum public procurement allocation to women. The last but one issue that commissions were to look at was to identify key specific and high impact economic interventions, amongst others to consider the increase in access to childcare, improving the school to work transition in STEM and other frontier skill sector so that women can be absorbed into the economy easily, addressing the legal and social barriers to gender equality in the workplace, improving financial inclusion and entrepreneurship of women, as well as strengthening women's voice and agency. And the last issue was really on international and foreign policy, which I have referred to. Thank you very much. Those were the highlights, and we expect that the commissions will reflect on this. There is, if you do not have a copy, and I hope it has been circulated, the paper is in volume 2 of the discussion papers of conference. I thank you.
No, thanks. We will circulate through our usual platforms. I'm now going to hand over to Comrade Jeff, and then we'll open for one round of questions once it's done. Is that okay? Are you happy with that approach? Okay.
Thanks, Comrade Bule, Comrade Gwen. Mine will be very brief because we had a media dialogue on Wednesday at Luthuli House dealing with the issues that arise from the report of Chief Justice Zondo in his capacity as the chair of the State Capture Commission. Just a few highlights that our approach as the ANC was to welcome the report of Zondo because it raises many issues that are pertinent to the ANC government and society as a whole. When you look at the Zondo report, it is divided in various headlines and themes that range from recommendations that will pertain to the Constitution, legislation, and structural matters. It also refers to matters that are pertinent to specific entities of government, and it also identified individuals whom findings and recommendations have been made. So our approach as the ANC was to refer all these specific findings and recommendations to the various subcommittees of the NEC. For an example, they recommend that we need to protect whistleblowers, so that matter will be referred to the Committee on the Constitution and Legal Affairs, as well as the Peace and Stability Unit of the organization. They will refer, for an example, that the president must be elected directly, and that matter is going to be referred to the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Department. So I'm just using the few examples to highlight the point that as the ANC, we are very serious to respond to all the issues that the Zondo Commission has highlighted. In terms of timeframes, all the subcommittees have been given until the end of August 2022 to report back to our task team so that we can be able to synthesize all these reports before a meeting of the National Executive Committee looks at all those matters. Insofar as members of the ANC were implicated in the Zondo Commission, in line with the resolution of the 54th Conference of the ANC, that those that are implicated in wrongdoing must present themselves to the Integrity Commission or face disciplinary processes. So as a result of that, we're in the process now of identifying all those members of the ANC who are implicated so that we can send the names to the SG's office as well as the Integrity Commission. Those who are implicated have a period of 2 months to present themselves to the Integrity Commission, or if they do not do so, they're going to be summoned into appearing before the Integrity Commission. So that's in broad outline of the steps that we are taking to responding to the Zondo Commission. And lastly, but not least, the NEC has adopted a discussion document that must stimulate debate within the structures of the ANC, starting now with this National Policy Conference, of how they view the whole issue of state capture. So we believe that this discussion document will go a long way in ensuring that the state capture does not occur again in South Africa. So that's in a nutshell what we have done now. So tomorrow, between 8:30 and lunch, all this commission will be discussing not only this issue of the state capture report, the report that Comrade Gwen has just highlighted on the gender issue, organizational renewal, as well as the strategy and tactics. Thank you.
Thanks, Comrade Jeff. We are now going to open the floor for questions on the presentation or the overview given by Comrade Gwen. Where is the roving mic? Do we have the mic, Amos? Okay. No, no, thanks, Amanda. Thanks for being part of DIP.
Sorry. There we go. My name is Teto Mahlakwana. I'm with Eyewitness News. My first question is just to you, Ma'am Gwen, that in reflecting on the economic and social conditions of women, as you spoke about now, there's the fact that the 2017 conference, because it was not the policy conference that resolved on this, it was the conference itself on decriminalization of sex work, which of course I think you'll agree cross-cuts both the economic and question of the abuse of women. How is the conference today, sitting here, going to deal with the fact that 5 years later, we still have not had that policy resolution manifest? Not only that, but every step has just been around consultation and many other such language with no urgency to make this a reality for a lot of women who are suffering from abuse while trying to carry out this work. And my second question is around the work of the commission, the Employment Equity Commission, to say what is it that can come out of these discussions that you are having that will ensure, as you listed there, that there's challenges around parity, around equality in JSE-listed companies and the others, which we get from the CEE every year. But there has not been enough in terms of consequence and accountability for those businesses or employers to see a point where we arrive at where women can earn equal pay, where women can be promoted equally as men, as the skewed figures show us. Thank you so much.
Abongile Dumago, SABC News. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Jeff, I'm going to come straight to you with regards to the names on this side, the names of those who were actually implicated in the State Capture Commission report. You're talking about them having been going to be given a chance to present themselves in front of the Integrity Commission, failing which they'll be subjected to disciplinary process. You're talking about them being given 2 months to do so. Looking at the fact that the country was actually crying out loud with regards to the extent that two-state capture has caused damage in the country, aren't you being a little too lenient to those who are complicated if you give them, who are implicated if you give them a whole 2 months to decide whether or not they're going to come to the commission, and if not, only then they will be disciplined? Thank you.
I'm asking. Ted. Yes. I think I want to. Yes. But what was the second? You can repeat.
you spoke about the numbers around representation that, Parliament, government only achieved its numbers in 2019. Then you spoke about how that comes across in workspaces, right? And you mentioned how JSE listed companies, for example, were some of the examples where you are not seeing the level of parity that is desired. And I'm asking, what is it that can come out of this policy conference that will empower the Commission for Employment Equity to have more teeth, I guess, for lack of a better word, to hold companies accountable for failing to meet this requirement? Because it's all good and well that we have it on paper that we must all be paid equally, but we sit here knowing that we are not. And we sit here knowing that men will always be preferred for promotions than women. So what is it that you can do around that?
Thank you. My name is Nonoma Sungweni from City Press. Firstly, I would like to direct one or two questions to Morano Hopa. You indicated that you feel that the issue of gender should be gender machinery must be led by the president. Yet you still admit that the women ministry, which is in the presidency, is grossly under-resourced. Do you think that the presidency or the ANC has failed the women when you look at this being under-resourced? What is it that you expect different from the presidency that the gender machinery must be led by him? That's my question from Ramogopa. And for Ndate Hadebe, you say the people who are implicated by the Zondo report. How many ANC members, how many at all, are implicated? And if you say two months, are you saying 2 months from the day the report was released, or 2 months from the day you are going to report back for them to present themselves before the Integrity Commission? And do you think the Integrity Commission is empowered enough to deal with these issues, and how do you avoid legal challenges emanating from those who are presenting themselves before the Integrity Commission? Thank you.
Sorry, Malin Gadin. My two questions are linked to Teto's and Norman's. Magwen, in terms of what Teto was saying, I want to ask you around internal matters when it comes to gender parity. Do you consider, or would the ANC consider enshrining it in its constitution that gender parity becomes an imperative in terms of the selection or the election of leaders, as well as in the top 6? Tatu Khatebe, in terms of the Integrity Committee, I've spoken to Tatu Mashamba quite extensively about this, around the capacity of the Integrity Committee. He's said this so many times. He's raised concern around their own capacity. He's raised concern around resources. Now, if you are taking 200 plus members who are implicated in the commission, how do you when the president was was elected, and there were MPs who had to undergo scrutiny via the Integrity Committee. The Integrity Committee wasn't able to handle that situation, given that they didn't have enough resource. How do you enable it now? They don't even have laptops. That's what Dr. George Mashaba was saying to us. So how do you enable it to have the resource and the skills set to ensure that they process this issue quite clearly? Thank you.
I now invite both of you to answer. Comrade Gwen, Comrade Jeff.
Thank you very much. Can I start with thanking you for the questions? Very important areas of reflection. Teto, yes, we do consult. The decriminalization of sex work is not a decision or a policy decision that can be taken without consultations as it is happening. And I know that it has been a number of years of consultation. However, it has been important because it cuts across many sectors, and we believe that it should not be too long to be firmer as a society, because if you are a leader, you would like, by the time you take a decision, to have many voices within the community saying, yes, it is our decision, and not only a top-down approach, because that would not work. It may actually even exacerbate a situation. So yes, there is a decision, and yes, there are processes of consultation, and we hope out of this conference we will also look at how to find a consensus in society and move much more decisively forward. The second issue on commissions, dealing with the private sector teeth. The fact that the Department of Labor and Employment is able to enforce disclosure is a very positive and significant step forward. And part of disclosure is to put gentle pressure to institutions to see themselves in the mirror before you rush to legislate. I think it is quite clear that with the pace that there is in the private sector, the state might have to consider carefully legislating on this matter. However, we still call on the private sector to do the right thing for women who are more than 50% of the population of South Africa, and who are their customers in our country in most cases, and the consumers of their products. The issue of Abut Nomen, you raised the issue of whether the president has not, or the ANC have not failed the women of South Africa. It is always difficult to talk about areas of strengthening your work without possibly exposing yourself to that kind of a criticism. However, I began by indicating the progress made so far. And that progress has been acknowledged and applauded globally. The UN Women found that there is no country as yet in the world that has achieved gender parity. So this is a struggle of the world, and I've been part and parcel of some of the UN summits where even in the first world countries, women are still fighting for representation, especially in the private sector. So that we identify weaknesses does not mean that nothing has been done, if maybe that can be read in that context as well. And when we conceptualized the ministry in the presidency, we also didn't want to divert funds that would also go towards mainstreaming of gender programs. For instance, education of the girl child. The budget is in the Department of Education. Health services, the budget is in health, and so forth and so forth. Access to NSFAS. We see more young women graduating, accessing higher education than otherwise. So, but we are saying with the resources that the department has, they need to be strengthened to even do much more oversight work. That is the message. Lizeka, yes, indeed, I think the issue of the top 6 will be discussed in commissions, and we will await the feedback. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for the questions. Actually, one question asked. Thanks for the questions. Actually, one, but posed in different men. The first issue to emphasize is that as I said on Wednesday, the Zondo report consists of 5,612 pages. So we don't assume that all members of the ANC have read that report. So we will combine this people that members of the ANC. We are busy verifying them. I think by next week we should be able to provide that list both to the SG's office and the Integrity Committee. So that's how that 2 months will pan out. But I do know that I know at least one member who has gone to the Integrity Commission on this, which is very good, which shows that we can be able to move forward on this matter. So I think those were the questions that were asked. About what?
Asked you about capacity and skill at Integrity Committee.
The task team, we took an initiative ourselves, which the NEC approved, because we're very concerned about the capacity of the Integrity Commission. So as we speak now, through the SG's office, they're busy trying to increase that capacity in the Integrity Commission. The task team has also met with the Integrity Commission, where we discussed some of the modalities of how we can be able to assist them in ensuring that they can be able to discharge their responsibilities at this moment in time. Thank you.
No, thanks, members of the media. This now brings us to the end of this late night briefing. We will again have more briefings tomorrow of this nature. As and when they finish presenting in commissions, we'll be taking the chairs to come and brief yourselves in this way. Thank you very much, and thanks for keeping South Africa informed about the 6th National Policy Conference of the ANC. Thanks.